into the land of the dragons. You will remember that in Views from the Meat Safe I had just sold my mobilette moped to Mr. Nobbs of Fratton. This was how, with the £10 I received for it, I was able to buy my first real motorcycle. But only if you go on a training scheme to learn how to ride it properly, said Mum. From the age of 10 I was besotted with these two-wheeled motorised wonders. Obsessed might be more accurate. It all began with a coach trip to Wookey Hole and the Cheddar Gorge. No, that's not a mass cheese eating, but caves in Somerset. Because such a trip held absolutely no fascination for me, being a difficult child, whilst waiting for the coach to depart, I nipped into a newsagent nearby to get a magazine to read. Yes, I really could read by then, although I did like lots of pictures among the boring bits. Quite right, haven't really progressed much. Now, why I chose a copy of that week's The Motorcycle, I have no idea. Perhaps the gods were in one of their let's have fun with this one sort of mood. Well, we shall never know. But that's where this whole sorry tale begins. I remember nothing of the journey, or of Wookey Hole, daft name I thought, or of the caves. I had seen the future in the pages of that magazine, and my oh my did it look exciting. Very soon my bedroom wallpaper vanished underneath of advertising material for various motorcycle makers. At this time, 1958, there were no Japanese machines to speak of in the country. Oh no, we're talking about a thriving, oblivious to the threat of foreign competition, home industry, and a very few expensive, thanks to heavy import taxes, Continentals such as Yamaha, BMW and Ducati. Names like Royal Enfield, Norton, oh no, I've slipped into list mode now. Drawing pins to hold this paperwork were consumed by the box load. Long-suffering mum and dad, anything to keep him quiet and stop him wrecking the house, they possibly thought. He'd grow out of it like he did that spud gun. Ah, the humble spud gun, yes indeed. We should consign that to the history books. Now, as I was but 10 years old, I still had a long time before I could actually own and ride a motorcycle legally. But undaunted, I decided to put the time to good use. So often in life I have found that the anticipation of a thing is the best part. Maybe I'm over imaginative? But by the age of 14 I knew rather more about motorcycles than was good for me. I shall let you be the judge of that, with this little mini saga coming up next. A couple of friends and I went by train to Southampton to a motorcycle dealership. They specialised in racing machines, and that was what interested us. Thinking in my naive way I would become a professional racing motorcyclist. A short career generally speaking. Warning, technical bit coming up. On the counter was a bit of engine. What's that? Asked John. I was a precocious boy, anxious to show off my knowledge of each of such things. Now that's a connecting rod, and on the bottom is an oil flinger, and on I went about dry and wet sumps, push rods and camshafts. The chap behind the counter offered me a job there and then, probably not seriously, but I did go up slightly in my ranking with my friends, who I think previously thought me rather peculiar. I was and am, of course. But what, you ask, does this have to do with dragons? Patience, please. We'll move on a pace and get to the day when, with the £10 from Mr. Nobbs, I pushed that first motorcycle home. Pushed? Yes, no tax or insurance at that point. So I joined the motorcycle training scheme run by a dedicated group of club motorcyclists. I loved that course and really learned a lot from those chaps. But they were all getting on a bit, and felt some younger volunteers would be a good idea. After passing the scheme and the government test afterwards, I was approached to become such a volunteer and agreed to give it a go. And this was how I met Diane. Yes, she was the older woman, learning to ride her Honda 90. Not so very much older, possibly, 7 years? Too much? Well, I was always drawn to older people. Now, of course, it's the other way about. Yes, I used to find that older people were more interesting than those of my own age. They seemed to know a bit more. Diane was a primary school teacher and needed to learn to ride her Honda to get some 10 miles distant from where I lived and she lived in Portsmouth to get to her school. Now, just what was it that attracted us to one another? Well, I know what it was for me. I'll let you lot decide what it was for her as our story unfolds. Peter, have you ever wanted to go to the Dragon Rally? Says Diane. Ah, yes, at last. Now we're getting somewhere. Now, I knew of the Dragon Rally, held in North Wales in the grim slate area of Llanberis in March, which isn't a month known for its fine weather, no matter where you are in the country. Well, I'd like to go, but I need someone to take me, she says. My father has a tent we could use. Tent, yes, but an old World War II canvas one. And it has separate ground sheet and wooden poles. Very heavy. So now we get down to the basic fact that she had a Honda 90, not quite the machine for such a trip, whereas I had a 350cc Norton single. Was it indeed that one fact that made me a desirable friend? Surely not. Yes, I said, I'd really love to go. Oh my, Peter. Little did either of us realise what we were letting ourselves in for. I borrowed a strange looking metal side pannier for the Norton to take essentials. We strapped the tent and 4 sleeping bags onto the rear rack of the Norton inside a huge plastic bag. I went to our local motorcycle shop to inquire about primer stoves. I left quickly when I realised a suitable cooker would actually cost me more than I'd paid for that Norton. Now, this would actually be the first long road trip I'd ever done. Previously, a foray into deepest Wiltshire was the most I've ever attempted. We needed a route, so we pored over a very out-of-date road atlas of my dad's, bought in 1946. Now, what my parents thought of all this, I've no idea. They never said, and of course I never asked. My friends thought I was completely loopy. Perhaps they were right. An advertisement appeared in the local paper under motorcycles for sale. Triumph Tiger 100 for sale, £50 or exchange wedding ring. Yes, I recognise Arthur's hand in that. I also had a Triumph I was building from parts. Most of my motorcycles always started life as boxes of bits. One fine afternoon in March, a Friday I recall, I collected Diane from outside her school in Hornby and off we rode. She pillion, brave girl, woman, you wouldn't catch me doing that, into the unknown land. I've never been to Wales at that point. Motorcycle 6-volt lighting was not known for its particularly penetrating illumination, and it gets dark quite early in March, especially in the south of England. Soon I was beginning to wonder what I'd let myself in for. However, having an attractive blonde female as pillion was every young male motorcyclist's dream. Well, it was mine anyway. After a couple of hours it began to rain. Did we have good weather gear? Hardly. I had a sheepskin lined leather flying jacket bought from Pride and Clark in London by Mum. Well done, Mum. Wonderfully warm on a cold, crisp winter morning. And Diane had a leather jacket and leather trousers. Were they at all waterproof? Absolutely not. But we were young and adventurous. What cared we of the wet, the cold and the dark? It was nearing 9 o'clock when we approached Shrewsbury, and a small group of motorcyclists waved us down. They were Dragon Rally pilots, they exclaimed. They'd volunteered to guide rally us through the complex town. There was no ring road round Shrewsbury in those days. "Follow me," says one. Now, all would have been well if he'd not gone tearing off, leaving us way behind. He soon disappeared from view, but fortunately returned to collect us, and this time at a slower pace, thankfully. The roads were streaming with water and I wasn't going to go tearing off. We crossed over the Severn into Wales. Wales! Nearly there then. Oh yes! Oh no, you're not, lad. This is mid-Wales. You've an awful long way to go yet. On and on we went, and I wasn't particularly used to following maps. I'd written it all down and it was stuck to my petrol tank because the rain had started to make it all go a bit soggy. So I sometimes ended up going quite the wrong way and had to turn around. Anyway, we met, as we're getting a bit closer, we're getting very tired and hungry. And as we got a little bit closer to North Wales, we met up with a small band of other riders. We all thought, blissfully or not, ignorance, nearer to the rally site. Now this was a disused army camp, we later discovered. Do you think we could find a place? We just seemed to keep going around and round in circles. One of our group had a sidecar and he managed to ram its nose into an earth bank, thankfully only denting the sidecar. Finally, just as we'd almost given up all hope, at around 1 o'clock in the morning, we found the entrance to the camp. Now we had to set about, cold, tired, wet and hungry, to get that tent up. But get it up we did, and into our separate doubled up sleeping bags we chastely clambered, soon to fall into a deep sleep. We awoke to a damp Saturday, North Wales morning, and set about looking for something to eat. There were burger vans and a coffee van, so began to feel a little better after having consumed a couple of those, especially after we got some of the road grime washed off our faces. Oh, but we must have looked a sorry sight. Fortunately there were no mirrors, so we were spared that. Diane suggested we held hands to keep warmer, but don't read anything into it. It seemed like an excellent idea to me. I was all for it, and it seemed to work too. Now what actually happens at one of these rallies then? I think I must have missed that from my memory, which is a fat lot of good when you're trying to relate this tale, of course. I think we wandered around and swapped tales with other idiots of the journey. Had lunch, probably more burgers and buns. Ugh. And all this time it was raining, the sort of rain that North Wales excels in. We examined our tent, which was letting in water across the ground sheet. I suggested we dig a ditch around the outside of the tent to channel some of this away. Plenty of slate to act as a sort of spade, and we each chipped away, making quite a reasonable dike. Our clothing was getting soaked and really heavy. My jacket was saturated, and fleece can hold a great deal of water, believe me. Now in one of the huts there was a band, so at least we had music of a sort to cheer us on. Oh yes, and we were given an enamel badge and a red dragon scarf each. I still have the badge. The scarf disintegrated on the way home. It was absolute rubbish, that scarf. Eventually we turned in, and about 2 o'clock in the morning Diane gave me a shake. My sleeping bag's soaked. Is yours dry? Mine was indeed dry. Look, she said, I'm going to come in with you, but no funny business. Now, how could I refuse her? Did I actually have a choice? It was really a statement of intent. Oh, very funny. Wasn't it? Always the perfect gentleman. It was nice to cuddle up though, despite having been soaked through. What a sight and what a sight and sight of disaster. What a sight, spelled SITE, and a sight of disaster greeted us that Sunday morning. Many tents had simply collapsed or got washed down the slope. Yes, we were all on a bit of a slope. This is North Wales after all, where the flat grounds at a premium. The toilet facilities, such as they were absolutely completely flooded, so you couldn't use those. So we packed up the tent, put it into its plastic bag, stuck it on top of the Norton on its rack, and then we thought to ourselves, is it actually going to start? Because around us people were kicking over bikes and there was nothing happening at all. Well, bless me, that lovely Norton, first kick, chuffed into life, was throbbing away. So we clambered on and off we set. Now, as we got out of Llanberis off towards Shrewsbury again, we came across a cafe and we stopped. There were a few motorcycles outside. We stopped and went in, and it was full of motorcyclists. They'd all had to spend the night there because the roads had got flooded, so no one could go either forwards or backwards, and they had to spend the night in that cafe. So we were the lucky ones, weren't we? We would have been dry in the cafe at least and had some decent coffee perhaps. Well, we probably would have had burgers. So yeah, anyway, and one of the chaps in there, he said, what bike you got then? So I said, well, it's a Norton Model 50. Oh, he said, I've got a spare engine for one of those, would you like it? I thought, what? I said, well, actually, no, I'm not really going to keep this bike, but thanks very much for the offer. Now, Ed, I'd have got that engine home, I don't know. Still, I don't think he intended to give it to me there and then. Very nice thought though, and I think that's the lovely thing about motorcyclists. They're all like, very many of them are like that, or at least they were then. We are talking about the 1960s here. So yes, so we set off from the cafe and on our way home. Now we ended up going along the M4. I don't know if that was the intention originally, but that wasn't the way we went. I'm sure it wasn't. But when we approached the services on the M4, and oh god, we were hungry and tired, so we called into there and squelched our way up the steps to the restaurant there, and there was a family came in. They just parked their car outside. Oh dear, what a journey that was, they said. God, I didn't know the half of it, did they? Dear, oh dear. Anyway, yes, we had a nice quick meal there, and gallons of coffee and tea. Or probably it was tea actually. I didn't drink coffee then. So yes, we came out and it was still raining, of course. Now how that Norton kept going I shall never understand. Absolutely astonishing. But apart from the clutch cable, which had stiffened up, it made it very difficult to change gears. I was changing gear without using a clutch towards the end. As we approached Diane's flat, there was a left-hand bend, and it had cobbled surface. Now I should have changed down, shouldn't I, to first gear, but I didn't because it was just so difficult to change gear. You know what's coming next, don't you? Yes, we've ridden all that way, 600 miles. And 20 yards from Diane's flat, we slid gently off. Fortunately, neither of us were hurt, but the poor old Norton, its left-hand footrest broke off. You'd think after all that we'd never ever do that again, we'd vow. Yet later that year in the June, we did it all over again, which is going to be another story. If you'd like to listen to that one, join us for that if you can. Thank you.